My apologies. Can you just see now? Is it okay?
Yeah. It's fine.
It's fine now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Good evening, all. Okay, what if I said a famous toothpaste company was introducing frozen products because obviously the teeth cleaning products were so well known that the connection between food and teeth should be a natural step. And what if I said you the story was true, that the famous toothpaste company actually experienced a steep decline in their profits after introducing this failed endeavor? How many times have you bought a product or rejected a product because of its brand story? Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all to the third session of Qurosity Club, Building Brands Through Stories. It's my honor and privilege to introduce you to today's speaker, Mr. Reagan Rodriguez. Mr. Reagan specializes in emotional design at SaaS company in Bangalore. He uses copy and design to build user experiences based on behavioral insights. His work is influenced by his 14 years as a copywriter and over 7 years as an entrepreneur. With a virtual round of applause, let's welcome today's guest speaker, Mr. Reagan Rodriguez. Over to you, sir.
Hey, thanks, Wally. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for making it here on a Wednesday. This is going to be a quick, fun workshop. We're going to try and interact as much as possible. So without delay, let's jump straight into it. I think I have to share my screen. Right, let's do that. Here we go. And if I was any good at this. All right, full screen, here we come. Okay, before we begin, just a few ground rules to check on. Number one, please don't try and watch this on your mobile phone. A lot of the creatives I will be sharing with you would be difficult to read if you're on your mobile phone, and the videos as well. So this is best viewed on your laptop or desktop. Point two, I can't share this presentation later simply because a lot of the work, in fact, almost all the work that is in this presentation is not mine. It belongs to the agencies that have made it or whoever is behind it. So a lot of it is copyright. It's not mine to share. I mean, we are using this purely for educational purposes, but I would not feel comfortable sharing it as a presentation. Point three and four, we will do breaks in the middle. So here's what I would suggest. Don't punch in your questions into the chat right away. Wait till we hit the Q&A point and push your questions there, because at that time I would be looking at the questions and I would be able to quickly answer you as well. It will also just help you, wait and pause and get your questions in the line before you just start putting them in while we are going through the workshop. And last again, don't watch this on your mobile. Really, really don't. Okay, but with that, let's roll into this storytelling, right? What exactly is storytelling is not something so strange. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. It's about having an idea or having a story behind whatever you're doing, whether it is a brand, whether it is you pitching an idea to somebody in an elevator, or whether it is something for a product that you're doing. We will not focus so much on the art of storytelling. What we will really focus on is how to identify and what defines a good story. Let's begin with a few examples, right? Let's start with a small exercise where I would want you to imagine, just for a moment, imagine that you are running or are the marketing team in a car company, any car company. What you're doing is launching a new car. It's a brand new car, it's a brand new model. This model's key benefit is its safety, right? So you're a car company, you're launching a new car. The key benefit of your car is safety. How would you tell this to the audience, right? What kind of story, what kind of visuals, what kind of communications would you want to put out there to tell this to your audience? Let's take a look at something one of the Indian brands has done. Now, this is by Tata Nexon. New SUV, the positioning is just exactly that. The safest SUV. Nice, upfront, right? You get the message very clearly. Here is a slightly different way to do it. Rather old though, by Volvo. The body copy is important, and we will come to a slide where I'll kind of highlight that. This is what the body copy says, right? So basically the idea is that the Volvo is designed that when it comes into an accident, the front and the rear zones crumple and the cabin area stays intact, stays safe. I'll just give you a few seconds to just quickly just read that copy. Mani, Rajan, the copy or the body copy, is that legible enough? Perfect, perfect. Okay, here is another example by another international brand. Okay, the classic, family in the car sticker, just redefined to amplify the same point. It says safety, right? 3 different ways of saying the same thing. Hey, our car is bloody safe. Now, let's hit you with the first poll. Rajan, what I want you to do when you're doing this poll is, imagine it is now Saturday, right? You're at a party, you met a friend or someone you just met for the first time, and this friend or this person is a marketing manager at an automobile company. And during the conversation, they mentioned, hey, you know what, we're coming up with a new car. It's, the real key benefit of this car is that it's super safe, but I'm just not happy with the kind of directions my agency is sharing with me. Which of the ideas that you saw would you recollect and say, hey, you know what, that is a nice idea I saw? All right, let's go. Remember, no wrong answers, right? Every answer is the right answer. Would we be able to see the results?
Regan, I'm able to see.
Oh, perfect. So that's enough time for everyone to have voted.
Regan, are you able to see it?
No, Raja, I'm not.
So Volvo is the highest, followed by Nexon and then Honda Odyssey.
All right. Do we have numbers? How many has Volvo beaten everybody else by?
Volvo is 55%.
Okay.
Nexon is 36% and Honda Odyssey is 10%.
Amazing. Right. That makes sense, right? Because from the 3, the Volvo story, A, is simple. More than memorable, it's also simple. It's a very simple proposition. And B, it's impactful. This is what is the baseline for, okay, we can see it there now. Perfect. I'm curious though about the 33% choice for Nexon. And that's probably because the simplicity of that story. Hey, it is not hard to understand. It is super clear and upfront. You cannot miss it. It isn't pretending to be clever, which Honda does try to do. Right? Honda tries to be a bit clever with the way they've done, and sometimes that can miss. Okay? Bottom line, if you're going to tell something, you need to try and look at how you can be impactful and how you can be clear. Here is a good stop point to discuss your role in the storytelling. Very often when we see creators like this, or when we see ideas like this, the biggest pricking point is, that's a great idea, but I can't come up with ideas like this. Or, these ideas are 1 in a billion. Everyone can't do this and they can't do it all the time. And you're absolutely right. I think it's important for us to understand, especially for you and for marketing professionals to understand that what is your role in the storytelling process. You don't have to figure out, you don't have to crack the story, but what you would have to do is be able to identify what makes a story good, right? What is a good story? Because your agency or your team will present ideas to you. And to pick the right idea is a bigger skill on most given days. So throughout this presentation, every time you see a creative, try and analyze it from that point, right? Hey, what about this do I like? And why do I really like it? What is it that works and what about it doesn't work? Okay, now let's move on to a few more examples, and we'll stay within the auto industry just because it's a brilliant industry with great storytelling. Before we jump in, any questions we can quickly take up? It's a bit early for questions, I'm sure, but if there's something, no. I'd love to answer them before we roll.
No, Mr. Reagan, I think I don't see any questions.
All right, let's move on then. Here is another ad. Okay, very simple proposition. Most cars have speed, right? Live the trip. So this is all about positioning your car for speed. Another way to do it, the classic ad by Mini Cooper, the roller coaster. And this the 206 Peugeot. In fact, this one doesn't even need a line of copy, right? Is that brilliant at one level? Again, three very different ideas, three very different ways to tell a story. And I'm sure in the back of your mind, you have already begun to kind of imagine which one of these works better, which one of these tells a story better. For me, personally, it's obviously going to be the 206 Peugeot, because I remember seeing this ad when I just started off in advertising, which is donkeys years ago, embarrassingly long ago. Even today, I can still remember this ad. I can still remember what the story for the Peugeot 206 is. Another positioning very often used by car companies, the family car, right? But this is again a nice way the story can be told. So you have a little bit of an image at the side. The image is a kind of a story on its own. It's about, the nuclear family meeting the larger family format. It's all about, family values, nice, warm feelings. Another way to do the family story. It's an ad by Jetta. I hope the bottom copy is visible, because for me, the strip kind of blocks it up, but I'm sure it's visible for the rest of you guys. This is rather Western storyline, and I'll apologize for that. Many of the ads I might share have dominant Western cultural notes, but I'm sure most of you can relate to the core concept or the core story behind it all. Here's another one. This is very peculiar to Australia, and just to kind of give a little background to it, the positioning is all about, that first experience you have, or for a father, right? The first car, the first family car is not about, the first family car is not the car for you, but it's your son's first family car. And that experience is what lives with your son for a long, long time. Build that great experience for your kid. And so it's all about bonding with your son and being together with your dad on a highway on a long drive. Doesn't seem, I'm sure most of us have done that as well. But this is an Australian brand, rather it's for the Australian market, and hence that kind of storytelling works for them. But what a way to look at the family car story. Okay. Questions?
I think there is one question: how much chance we misinterpret Volvo ad?
Well, that's a very good question, So no pain, no gain, no risk, no money, right? You can play it safe, and that's what Tata did at the end of the day. Tata knew that they didn't want to take a risk. And again, I'm assuming, I can't speak for Tata, but it seems like they wanted to play it safe, at least in this ad. And hence they went with that. Volvo did take a risk. So yes, there is a chance that the ad could be misinterpreted. It's often a risk that would pay out well if handled well. Another important thing is when you're talking about stories, it's important to also not be so isolated about them. Like neither would Volvo or Tata just release this piece of communication and end it. They would release different communications for different medium, and hence you would be able to kind of vary the story or the emotion based on the medium you're using as well.
Also, Professor Srijan, is that one point that the kind of experience they gained over the matured and growing markets, that confidence level comes because Volvo has been handling the mature market for a long time, so they're more confident. I'm just curious to know about it. So
no, that is also a very good point. Rajan and me both have worked together in Kuwait, and I remember we often used to get this input that these ideas you're suggesting will not work for the Kuwaiti audience. They will not understand these things. But honestly, the core of any story is emotion, right? Stories are common everywhere in the world. Everybody relates to a good story. So long as the story is strong, long as the idea is good, it doesn't matter whether it is a Western or a more mature audience or an Asian audience. In fact, some of the most brilliant Indian ads are based on these strong emotions. The key is to find the right cultural icon or the right cultural story or the angle that works for your market. But you don't have to go simple because you believe that your market is simple. There is no such thing as a simple market. At least I think that's so.
Thank you.
How do we differentiate various emotions in these with customer motives? Honestly, you begin first by what kind of an emotion you want to emote. For example, with Volvo, while they wanted you to believe their car was safe, they did not want you to get that warm, fuzzy feeling about the car. They wanted you to get that, damn, I'm very sure this car is brilliant in an accident, right? It's not easy to talk about an accident when you're selling a car. Most companies will say, no, why, let's not go negative. But Volvo knew that, or they believed that that was the emotion that would help them stand out from the rest of the models. And that's important, right? If you're telling a story, the reason you're here to tell a story, the reason you are trying to tell a story is because you want to stand out. So the emotion that you want to go with has to be that different. For a long term, how effective the story is? Honestly, Prasanta, the Porsche ad. Or if you ask anyone who has been in the advertising, or any one of you as well, which of the ads do you remember? It's always going to be those ads that have had a story behind it. You would probably not remember those stupid, silly one. Rajan, I'm not sure if you remember this, but we used to keep talking about this ad, right? Every second ad had a father and a son pointing up towards the skyline, right? That's a classic ad to say, hey, the future. Nobody remembers those ads. So these ads, a good story will always be remembered. Srinivasan, so it's not one story that fits for all. Well, your story has to be related to you. So try not to tell the story necessarily. I mean, you do want a story that people will relate to, but it's very important that the story relates to you as the brand. You can't just go out and tell any story because people want to hear that story. If today Black Lives Matters is a story everyone wants to hear, doesn't mean it becomes your story. And lots of brands learned it the hard way when they all ran onto Twitter and said, hey, Black Lives Matters, and let us try and do something to show that we are part of the cause. It backfired on them. And that's something brands should be very, very cautious of. Don't jump onto every story. Stay true to your story. Some stories stir controversy. Is it good? It doesn't have to be good. That shouldn't be the objective of the story to stir controversy. The fact that it does may not always be bad, but that should never be your objective. Okay. Should we move on? Right. Why? The most basic rationale to why does a good story work? Okay. And I'll use an example of Don Norman. Don Norman wrote The Design of Everyday Things in around 1998. Now, when he wrote this book, and the coffee pot this cover of this book is basically the coffee pot is something, it's an experimental coffee pot that was done by a French designer. If you try to pour coffee from that, it actually spilled on your fat and it would burn you, right? So the entire premise of the book was that when you do something, its usefulness, its usability should always be number one. Rather than be about show, be more about context, be more about usefulness. And this book became the benchmark for products. When I mean products, I mean SaaS products, softwares, became the benchmark when creating products. And the thinking is that, hey, don't try and be colorful, don't try and be jazzy, try and be functional, right? That is what matters more than anything else. This was 1998. In 2005, Don Norman came out with emotion design. So what happened during that time? Don Norman realized that he had got it wrong. And he bravely says that in the book, that the real motivation for most people when they are buying things is really not how useful that thing is. Very often, it is the emotion it triggers in you. And again, he uses an object in the cover. So the object that he's put up in the book cover is a rather silly thing at one level. It's a spaceship juicer. So you would put your orange and squeeze orange on it, or you put a lemon and squeeze a lemon on it. Now, he actually owns this, and he owns a gold-plated one. The kick is you cannot use the gold-plated one to squeeze juice because the acid in the juice would spoil the plating. So you buy this juicer. The juicer comes with instructions, and do not use this juicer to make juice. And his point is, you know what, in spite of that, I love this juicer, and it is one of the highlights in my house. It is one of the talking points. When people come in, they look at this and it begins a conversation. Why? Because people like something that evokes an emotion. And if you have done that, if you have triggered an emotion in someone, you have made a connection with them. So if you have to choose between two directions, direction one is, let me say it upfront, safest SUV. And you have to choose a direction that says, let me trigger an emotion in you. Let me get you to feel afraid of life if necessary. Let me get you to feel safe with life if needed. Let me get you to feel overconfident in life because you're on the safest SUV. Always go with the one that will trigger an emotion, because people buy based on their emotion, not on logical thinking. That is why stories work so well. Another brilliant thing about stories is stories can be adapted. Stories can stay the same and still be different. This is a screenshot from this TV series running right now on Netflix called The Tale Darkened, right? This is Hansel and Gretel. It's just one of the stories of Hansel and Gretel. We all know Hansel and Gretel. It's the witch in the gingerbread house who eats the kids. Today, something needed to change about that. The story that witches are bad, witches are evil, witches eat people, the negative emotions to witches needed to change. But the story didn't need to. So here's what he did. It's just one line that, or just, one of the characters just says this, that she was just a woman. She's not a witch, she's just a woman who likes to eat kids. What they've done is, and you've seen this, some people would call it making it politically correct, but what it really is about taking a classic story and adapting it to the needs of today. And that is the power of a good story. If your brand has a powerful story, it can stay on for ages and ages. It doesn't get old because your story can adapt itself to changing times. Romeo and Juliet, right? Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet is even relevant today and is still being used as the baseline story for so many movies and so many books. The power of a great story. Questions? Remember the ad of Mercedes where the power of its headlight was shown? The skeleton of a cow standing in front of Mercedes could be seen clearly under a power headlight. Yeah, that's a clever ad. I'm not sure how much of a story that is, but that's a clever ad. And sometimes that can get a bit problematic, honestly. Cleverness should not be the go-to solution. Emotion should be. Cleverness should not necessarily. Okay, I think we're ready to move on then. Now, we're going to take a look at 3 commercials. I'm sure most of you have seen this, so earphones on. And I apologize, they are in Hindi. I couldn't find an English version for that. I hope that's okay with all you guys. In case someone is not able to understand them, put that down. I will give you a gist of what the commercial says. But though more or less, yeah, pretty simple to understand, so you would have been familiar with the core of the brand. We're going to take a look at these 3, and then we're going to talk after that.
There's no audio, Reagan.
Okay. Let me see if I can fix that.
You must share the computer sound as well, probably.
Okay. Let me just get rid of. Should work. Is it working now?
और कोई प्लेयर नहीं मिला?
क्या करूं सर, मुझे सिर्फ आपका ही विकेट चाहिए।
चल बॉलिंग कर। जब स्टैमिना बड़ा होगा, कोई चैलेंज बड़ा नहीं होगा। बूस्ट विद न्यूट्रिएंट्स गिव्स 3 times more stamina. अब से मेरी टीम में खेलेगा। बूस्ट इज द सीक्रेट ऑफ आवर एनर्जी।
Anyone needs help with the translation for that? Right. The second commercial.
मेरे बेटे को जीत की आदत तब लगेगी जब वो मुझे हराएगा, तब नहीं जब मैं उसे जीतने दूंगी। आखिर आदतें ना एक दिन में बनती हैं, ना आसानी से। तो जिस दिन वो मुझे हराएगा, मैं जीत जाऊंगी। सिर्फ एक माँ अच्छी आदतों की अहमियत समझती है, इसलिए मैं देती हूँ उसे बॉर्नवीटा।
All right. And sorry about that. The last one.
थोड़ा ही बाकी है।
मम्मी ने सबको पालक पनीर दे दिया, खुद कम खाया।
कैल्शियम एंड आयरन कहाँ से मिलेगा? जहाँ से हमें मिलता है। एक कप हॉर्लिक्स में है आयरन जैसे पालक में, विटामिन सी जैसे ऑरेंज में और कैल्शियम जैसे दूध में।
हॉर्लिक्स नहीं, पालक पनीर।
All right. Poll 2. 3 ads for pretty much the same kind of a product, but 3 different stories. So let's not focus on the positioning. The positionings are slightly different. They all have different, taglines, as you would call them, but the way that they have told their story, right? So it's not about whether Boost has a different tagline or a better tagline or better brand positioning. It's about the way that Boost told its story. It's about the way Bournvita told that story, and about the way Horlicks told that story. Which do you feel is the most impactful for you personally, right? Purely for you personally.
We have a couple of questions, so we'll take up after this, maybe.
Sure. Okay, Bournvita gets a 58%. Amazing. I think you guys, pretty much know storytelling. I really don't have much to tell you guys because you guys have been bang on every poll so far. Absolutely, I think Bournvita's story works at so many different levels, whereas Boost takes the classic celebrity, and while Boost has done a brilliant thing of keeping their story or the narrative the same over the years, it kind of looks a little weak when you compare it to the Bournvita story, which is an emotion that gets to you and sticks with you. While you like the Boost ad, it's a nice ad, it doesn't stick to you. Horlicks, on the other hand, had so much of potential, and they actually have a superb ad. I'm not sure how many of you have seen that plays well on their positioning of when did you grow up, right? But this particular ad, the story tends to be a little more demonstrative or little more sales pitch than a pure story. And that is really the difference, I think, that we should learn to identify and be okay with. That I'm okay with holding back on talking about all the features of my product because the story is what will deliver far more impact. The audio is not clear, Srinivasan?
It is clear. It is clear. We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. Yes, we had questions.
Yeah. One question from Mridula. How do you select any emotions which may be affected by other part of the people?
How do you select emotions which might be affected by other people?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I am not very sure I answered that question, but is it about the negative effect of that emotion on other people?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, that's
Okay.
what, yeah, that's
Right.
what she really meant. Yeah.
Well, this is something that we do with products predominantly. We don't trust ourselves as the final decision maker. You test, and test, right? This is something that most good agencies will always do. No matter how convinced you are of your idea, no matter how sure you are of your idea, always test your idea, because you will discover things in testing that you could never possibly have figured out. And that's where you kind of, take a decision like that. Hey, is the negative implication of my story so large that it can't be ignored? Or is it it's a bit minor and may not be something that would affect my core audience?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, the second question is, if people don't connect brand story, even if it is interesting, what to do? I mean, that's a kind of question.
Well, I think the best way is to be honest and accept where the fault lies. The fault never lies with the people. The fault lies with the story. Look, the brand is the brand, right? The brand isn't going anywhere. The brand's always going to be there. Is the story that probably wasn't as powerful as we might have thought, which is why it just didn't connect. Or maybe it was the wrong story for the right people. And that often happens. We sometimes so strongly believe in what a good story is that we sometimes forget who it is for or who's telling it. Both of these are just as important. And that was my example, earlier, of how loads of companies jumped on the bandwagon for Black Lives Matters. Black Lives Matters is not something every brand could kind of, tag themselves to. Nor is it, every audience's, like, you couldn't try and do it to an audience if you're in India, because why on earth would it work in an Indian audience? Even though it has its relevance, it would not work as well. So if the story didn't work, there's probably just two things that went wrong. It was the right story to the wrong people, or it was a wrong story to the right.
Yeah, sure, thanks.
All right. So we'll take a look at storytelling in a slightly different aspect, because that's the power of storytelling. It's not just about making good-looking print or TV commercials. Storytelling is very essential in user experience. I'm going to just use this as an example. Obviously, storytelling can be applied to so many different aspects beyond marketing and advertising. Oh, okay, this is a question I can try and out before we go. After successful story, how do we differentiate us with a new story for another product? Or should we stick to the same theme? Look, if a story works, you definitely want to stick to the same theme. And that's the power of a great story. So if you look at the Bonvita ad, they actually have a series of 3 commercials that do the same thing. It's always a mother and it's always the child. The base of the story changes, but each and every one of those commercials will pull a tear from your eye. And I kid you not, I mean, I'll be honest, I've been watching that commercial a couple of times while making my presentation, and more than once, it has got me teary-eyed. It is just such a powerful emotion. I mean, I'm not a parent, I'm not a mother, but that emotion is strong and I can feel it. And they do that same emotion in 3 different commercials, and they do it brilliantly. I would not expect them to change it. Okay. the fake story. Look, that is a very different part. So there's a big difference between your brand's position and the story. The brand's position can be a lie. The brand might not, or the product might not be able to do everything it promises. That is a different part of this entire system. Our focus is on, hey, once we have got that positioning clarified, how do we communicate that positioning? And as far as communicating it is concerned, there's no lie in that communication. You're telling the story about the idea or the communication. So I don't think a story is a lie. Sometimes the positioning feels a little stretched on the truth, but the story isn't. Because it's the emotion. How do you make stories for products that which we can't connect to emotion? Oh, there is no such thing. There is no such thing. And I would like to show you a few of the examples of really stupid, boring products where we do storytelling. So let me just take you into one of these. Now, this is a product that I personally work on. So, oh God, I can't believe I call my own product stupid and boring, but for good reason. Okay. So this is this is a product that lets you build incentive programs. Now, what you're looking at is a screen that lets the user connect their other tools with your product. As a process, it is extremely boring and tedious, right? Whichever of these options you clicked on, whether you try to connect your CSV file, HubSpot, or Pipedrive, you're going to be taken to a whole bunch of stupid technical imtiaz, like why is technical bad? But no, imtiaz, the rest of us don't get it, that's why. But hardcore techie stuff. And most of the users aren't techies. So they really struggle their way through doing this process. This is something we realized after doing testing and speaking to a few users. So what we did is, we wanted to modify their emotion that they had before they began this process, right? So the initial screen was a clean design, no mucking around. You come here, click, do your job. This was our next iteration. We brought in a story. So this design came out when we were in the middle of the lockdown during COVID times. And this product is predominantly used in the US as well. Most of our users were at home now and working from home. We wanted that to be the beginning of our story. So if you look at the illustration itself, there are multiple little stories in it. A, she's sitting at home. B, she seems to be having a relaxing time. So what we're effectively doing is bringing in the story that, hey, this is a really chilled page. This is not as difficult as it seems. You could be chilling out, open your laptop, and connect your HubSpot account to Compass. Right? That is the power of a story. You can change the emotion of your user, of your viewer, of your audience by just giving them a story that they could connect to. Another page or another section in our product, you're all familiar with this left-hand side navigation, which has all your options. Now, again, right, it's a plain blank looking section. It has all the tools that you need to kind of access. Again, it is the same emotion that we were fighting. People, the moment you try to use our product, especially if you're not a techie, you feel those little pangs of, oh, this seems difficult. Oh, this seems like a lot of work. And we wanted to change our emotions, so we changed our story. We spent almost a week on this little illustration there. And I'll show you the illustration. Again, we played on the work from home. We played on the emotion and the story that we were telling you. That is, this is an easy to use product. This is super simple, right? You could be doing it while just relaxing at home. It really isn't a hardcore, blow your brains out kind of an environment. Get yourself in the right mood. Stories can be applied to almost anything. There is nothing that cannot be related to an emotion. Even technical SaaS products like us. We, in fact, even use storytelling when we are doing user testing. An example of that would be when we bring in people to do user testing, we want them to get into the skin of the story. So we don't just give them our screen and say, hey, yeah, what do you think of it? We first begin by talking to them. We build a scene in their head. We tell them, hey, this is who you are. This is how long you've been doing this job. This is what you did this morning. You have now finished so many pieces of your work. You're getting ready for dinner in the evening. But before you go, you kind of need to finish this that your boss has asked you. Now try and do this, right? So everything works better once you brought a story into it. Okay, questions?
Yeah, we have one question from Mr. Abhinav. Red Bulls and ad, while tells it will give you the wings and you can fly. Which category of ad it would be? Many people actually want to fly, but that's not possible, after taking Red Bull. So,
well, look. So the Red Bull story is actually a multifaceted story, right? What began with this little clever idea of a Red Bull will give you wings became a big brand story. Red Bull started the Flugtag, which is a competition where people came together, built a craft, and shoved it off a ramp and tried to fly. I took part in one when we were in Kuwait. We were a bunch of, just a bunch of guys came together, and you had to build a little craft, get into it, and throw it off a ramp into the sea. Rajan, I think you had left by then. Luckily for you, if not, you would have been one of the guys in that getting thrown off that ramp. But and then Red Bull went further. Red Bull went into sports and everything else. Basically, what is wings? Hey, it gives you energy, right? You can go further and higher. And Red Bull today is synonymous with adventure sports. It's synonymous with adrenaline. So they did take that gives you wings story, and they did pull it, and make a huge. So they no longer have to talk about wings anymore. But that became a nice base point for the story, and it evolved into something nice, I feel.
Sure. So thanks. I have next question. I saw some, this is from Wasim. I saw some soap ad where they show other brand blur image and show negative and highlight their product. How ethically right is it?
Look, that's an advertising ethics question. Not the scope of this conversation, but it's a gray area. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks.
Is there any other questions, or should we move?
Yeah, I think there is one question from Syed.
No.
Sir, how about a medical device guy tell a story about a product?
Oh, well, a lot of good products, medical instruments, whether you're talking about your blood pressure monitors, your blood sugar monitors, etc. I've done superb stuff. But let me tell you a really nice story. This was done by LG. So LG manufactures or produces rather these CT scan machines that are used by hospitals. So it's one part of their department. I could be wrong whether it's LG or Mitsubishi. I think it's LG. So they had a product team, just like how we have a user experience team. And a lot of their products were being used in hospitals for kids. So the team went into user testing, and they visited one of these pediatric hospitals. What they found is that young kids, especially kids below 5 and 8, were extremely scared to go. That CT scan machine is quite daunting. You're in there, you can't see anything, and the sound is quite loud. It scares the kids. And very often, the parents would not be able to get the kids to go, and there would be a lot of crying there. The team didn't want that emotion to be associated with their machine. They said, hey, our machine's a lifesaver. People shouldn't be hating it. You shouldn't be afraid of it. So what it is, they changed the story of getting a CT scan. It's a very simple idea. They just shrink wrapped the entire CT scan machine with a printout of a fairy tale. So the entire CT scan machine looked like a wonderland. So you felt like you were not entering a CT scan machine, but you were entering a beautiful castle, a beautiful cave, and they did different stories. They had these decals put on the floor. Kids loved going for a CT scan now because it felt like it was an adventure. It no longer felt that it was a daunting, cold, white machine. And that's a part of story. It is not about necessarily making money. It's about doing something well. And if you focus on that, right, and that's always your core focus, and I want to do this and I want to do it well, whether it is making the menu of a product, whether it is making a better medical equipment, or if it's about changing people's attitudes and behaviors, getting people to stop spitting on the road, no matter what you want to do, if you do it with a good story, which is the idea, you will always be able to do it much, much better. Oh, that was G. Right, okay. Yeah, I knew I got that name wrong. Thanks. Right. That is it for some questions? Okay. Quick.
Yeah, I think more or less we're done. Yeah. One more question I see in the question section. Devapriya, one question from Devapriya. All the 3 ads are positioned keeping target audience in mind. The price of the product says why a targeted audience. Okay. How does storytelling benefit my balance sheet, particularly in a country like India with 70% population rural sector, particularly B2C and commodities? Thanks.
Oh, well, there's only one way to test that. Walk into a supermarket to buy pretty much anything, right? And don't go with the decision to pick a particular brand.
Okay.
The package that you find attractive and decide to buy for the first time, ask yourself, why did you pick it up? Today, storytelling in packaging is such an essential thing. Look at paperboard. Paperboard built itself on this amazing storytelling, not just in its commercials, but in the way that you experience the product, right? The packaging, the little paper squeeze and drink. While everybody else was doing Tetra packs and was trying to get fancy with plastic bottles, paperboard went and tried to be the child in you, which is the entire base of its story, including in its packaging. So right from making the packaging look fun and targeting the inner child in everyone, right from the way it looks to the way it feels to the way it's experienced, the way you open and drink it, you got to squeeze it to drink it, everything works so well for them. So if you're looking at, does storytelling really affect your bottom line? The truth is, not telling a story will actually cost you more. Good advertising always saves you money, never costs you money.
Okay, thanks. We have one more question from Shiv Shankar.
Yeah.
It is understood that the reactions for a story or the way it is received from audience is highly unpredictable. There are some stories which turn the brand the other way around and even led to brand boycott.
Right.
Is it really worth of the risk? I think we discussed about it, but then yeah,
No, I completely understand. That's such a valid point. The only way to do this is testing, right? The bottom line is you test. Yes, there's always going to be risk, but you try and mitigate your risk by doing your testing correctly. You don't try and just do quick focus group testing. You try and do more deep group testing. There's so many different methodologies. You try and implement as many as you can to make sure. And today, when agile has become a buzzword, I think it is even more important to embrace it in processes of marketing or any kind of brand communication. We do it with products all the time. When we have an idea, we don't wait till we've executed it. We test it at every stage. We test it at our whiteboarding stage. We test it at a wireframe stage. We keep testing the same idea through its different iterations because you want to make sure that the idea is strong. So you don't just wait to get that final output and then test it. Very often, it's the glam or the gloss of your output that might probably sail you through. So we test our ideas on a wireframe, where it's nothing but just boxes and lines. And we would do that even with advertising. So in the good old days, and really good old days, when we had to present an idea, we didn't have computers to do it. We would actually have to draw our idea on a little piece of paper. So you would have a little box and you would write your visual there and you make a little scribble and you would try and sell that. If you could sell that to your creative director, to your client in that small box with a little doodle and a little thing, you got a great idea. And that's, I think, something that is so essential with testing anything, right? Don't test the final output, test at every stage, and that's how you get a stronger. And probably how you'd avoid landing yourself in a soup. Okay. Like impact of the story effect in demand. How to identify the same? I mean, how do you measure the effect of your story? Well, there are plenty of tools that would help you do that well, depending on the media you're using. And again, today with digital media, especially if you're testing it, whether you're doing it out, on YouTube or as banners, you can actually release two different versions of a story and see which tests better, or which has a better click rate, has more shares, more likes. So many very nice ways today to test the power of a story. And honestly, that is the go-to route for most brands. Nobody releases just one story out there and praise and bets all their money on it. Most brands will release many different versions of the story and in smaller markets and test how it is doing. And then the one that does well gets released to a larger segment or larger market.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yeah.
Right. Okay. One pet peeve, I guess, from my side about storytelling. So storytelling is very important, but more importantly, it is important to do it well. Right? So the most important part of a story is not just telling stories, but doing it well. Very often, people think telling a story is good enough. Right? No offense to the nice guys behind this, but building a story and shoving your brand in it is not storytelling. So be very, very cautious about that. Today, this is the go-to method for most brands out there. Hey, let us create content and let us shove ourselves into that content, right? Brand placement is the easiest thing to do wrong. So if you want to tell a story, first focus on who you are, how is the story related to you, and then how the story is also related to the person you're telling it to. Because you do not relate to everything. You can't fit yourself into the story. So don't try to fit yourself into a story. Find a story that fits you or that talks about you. A lot of programs like this, a lot of content like this out there. And it seems, hey, long as people are entertained, they will, connect. They're entertained, right? They're laughing, they're happy. Great, I've got that emotion. Now that emotion will flow down to my brand. I really don't think it works that way. The human brain is super powerful in compartmentalizing things. It can look at an ad and say, wow, great, superb, I enjoyed this ad, great fun, but doesn't mean I will buy this product, because the two are very different. So it's not, every story is not about making people laugh or making people cry. The right story is about connecting you as a brand to an emotion. So think of the brain as a cupboard which has different shelves. You want to make sure that you occupy the right shelf. You just don't want to be the funny guy, or you just want to be the emotional guy, because that is not going to get your product necessarily sold. You want to make sure that you've put yourself in the right compartment of your audience or your consumers or your users' mind. Right. And I think that's it from me. Did I exceed my time? Hell, 8 o'clock sharp, yo.
Thank you.
All right, let's do some questions then.
Yeah, I think more or less we're done with the questions. We had quite a good interactive session. So if there are no more questions, friends, we are coming to the vote of thanks. We had a fantastic session by Mr. Reagan, and let's thank him on building brands through stories. I think some of the examples are excellent examples, connecting emotionally with the people. I think that's great part of it. And I would like
to add something, Anjanappa, before you conclude. Yeah. Yes, I think so many stories. I think the last time we heard so many stories would be what Aesop's fables. Maybe we should really call this the Reagan's branding fables. Maybe
I also wish we had a curiosity meter to actually let you know the high levels of curiosity emotion this session has actually instilled upon us. Thank you so much, Reagan. Over to you, Anjarappa. Yes.
Thank you, Mani. Yeah. So thank you all the attendees for joining today's session. Indeed, it's a great pleasure hosting you all and hearing some incredible insights from Mr. Reagan. On behalf of Dayananda Sagar University, the Dean, the Curiosity Club Committee and members, on behalf of our faculty and students, we would like to thank you for sparing your valuable experience with us. Thank you so much, Mr. Reagan. And
thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Friends, our next session will start on 26th November, Friday. Mr. Viraj Pongshe will, from all the way Canada, will speak about how design is critical in marketing. Thank you. Good evening. Hello.
Yes.
Thank you, Reagan. Wonderful session.
Thanks, Rajan. I hope Viraj is not better than me. Just for you guys to know now, Rajan, Viraj, and we all work together. So when you guys, if you guys are going to be there for Viraj's session, please do not answer anything he says. If he asks you questions, just ignore him. Treat him terribly. If you like my session, treat Viraj terribly. Right? You'll be doing me a favor.
That's a great input. We will.
That's my story. Treat Viraj. Viraj used to be my creative director, and he's also a good friend of mine. So I'm sure you guys are going to have an amazing session with him tomorrow. Enjoy that. Take care. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful seeing you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah. Good night, friends. Good night. Take care. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
See you, Professor. I think it went well. Exactly at 8 we finished.
On the dot. Yeah. Wonderful. Mani, Anjarappa, thank you so much. Imtiaz, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much, Imtiaz, for being very patient.
Thank you, Professor. Take care.
Thank you, Rajan sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.